Well, good afternoon, everyone. Michael Soothing here, talking to you on Good Friday. And today, what I wanted to talk about a little bit is some of the themes from Good Friday. The Last Supper, Leonardo da Vinci. We'll talk a little bit about his painting and what it means, and some little known facts about it, and also look at what Jesus' message was on that Last Supper, the first communion that was ever done, which also was the Passover meal for his disciples at the time. And I will also steal just a little bit, or more than a little bit, from the theme of the Palm Sunday sermon done at my previous church I went to in Santa Cruz County, California, called Twin Lakes Church. And if you would like to watch that encouraging sermon, he's been doing a series about finding comfort during this crisis, this virus crisis. Pastor Renee. I will link it below in the comment section and the description. I will also link to a live stream you can hook up to if you want to watch Good Friday service live streamed. Excuse me, again, allergies. Which Twin Lakes will live stream later this evening at 5 o'clock or at 7 o'clock. I will link to that. But first, let's take a peek at Da Vinci's painting, The Last Supper. I didn't get the whole painting in the way it printed, unfortunately. It was a little bit clipped off the ends. But what was Da Vinci trying to accomplish? And there's some interesting tidbits about the painting. I will read you one of the interpretations here I found online. The Last Supper is Leonardo's visual interpretation of an event chronicled in all four of the biblical Gospels, which are basically all four biographies as well as theological statements. The evening before Christ was betrayed by one of his disciples, he gathered them together to eat, to tell them he knew what was coming. He also washed their feet to show that the master must also be a servant. Something difficult to learn if you're head of a household or a business manager or something like that. Da Vinci had not worked on such a large painting before and had no experience in the standard mural medium of fresco. He also painted it on the side of a wall, basically, plaster. So it started to deteriorate very quickly after completion of the painting. And it's been restored many times since. I don't know if I'm gonna, maybe I should sip a little coffee. This is one of my mugs from my company that I used to work for, Space Systems L'Oreal. Now they're called Maxar Technologies or something, but we would get these mugs when we launched a satellite program. This is an old one from Telstar. Little depiction of the satellite there. Telstar. I should have kept all of them like a collection, but that's an aside. I still dream about work all the time, including last night. I dreamed I was late to work. Uh-oh. and I had borrowed someone's car, strangely. Okay, we're way off topic. I wanted to give you some words of encouragement. So before we delve in more into Da Vinci's painting, I'm going to talk about the Last Supper just a little bit. I hope that rustling is not too loud. Jesus' theme in the Gospel of John. I have my personal Bible here that I scribble notes on. Some think that's a little disrespectful, but I don't, because I want to remember certain things about certain passages. One of the interesting and first things that happens is that in the painting, Da Vinci is showing the moment when Jesus explains that one of his disciples is going to betray him. That would be Judas Iscariot, right? And it says in, this is called the farewell discourse, when Jesus is talking to his disciples. And Jesus says, let me see if I can find it. John chapter 13, in verse 21, Jesus says, Jesus was troubled in spirit and testified, I tell you the truth, one of you is going to betray me. His disciples stared at one another, at a loss to know which one he meant. One of them, the disciple whom Jesus loved, that would be John. And, John's talking about he's the favorite, so, it's funny that it's in the Gospel of John. He does not refer to himself by name. He says the one whom Jesus loved was reclining next to him. Simon Peter motioned to this disciple and said, ask him which one he means. Leaning back against Jesus, he said, Lord, who is it? And Jesus answered, it is the one to whom I will give this piece of bread when I have dipped it in the dish. Then dipping the piece of bread, he gave it to Judas Iscariot, son of Simon, and gave him instructions, go do what you're going to do, right? It's interesting that Peter then just gets all puffed up with, basically with pride, and he says to Jesus, I will lay down my life for you, Jesus. I will follow you anywhere. He's thinking, that evil Judas is going to betray you? I would never do such a thing. I would lay down my life for you, right? And Jesus said, will you really lay down your life for me? I tell you the truth. Before the rooster crows this morning, early a.m., you will disown me. Not once, not twice, 3 times, Peter. So you see, it doesn't work so well to get all puffed up with our human pride. But then Jesus goes on to tell us something which we can apply in our life today. He says, let not your heart be troubled. Trust in God, trust also in me. And he's talking now about his future plans for us. In my Father's house, that is, if you're a believer, If you're not, you can listen anyway, I promise. In my Father's house there are many mansions. If it were not so, I would have told you. I am going there to prepare a place for you. And if I go to prepare a place for you, I will come back and receive you to myself, so that where I am, you can also be. Interesting that he then says, later on, or actually before that, he says, and this is the solution for what we need to be doing today. Just before that, he says, in verse 34, "A new command I give you, love one another. As I have loved you, you need to love one another. By this all men will know that you are my disciples, if you love one another." You notice he repeats it 3 times. So I think if Jesus is telling you something directly, and he repeats it 3 times in one paragraph, he might be trying to make an important point that we need to hear. This is one I struggle with, and it's an important one for me, because I can tend to be intolerant and unloving at times, which is okay if you're talking about really evil people and things out there. But it's not okay if you're talking about people who are sincerely seeking God, but they're just very annoying or irritating. All right? We're all struggling with, anxieties and probably irritations. We're closed in either by ourselves or with 1 or 2 people. And Jesus is making a point as to what one of the solutions is. He goes on to talk about how he's going to essentially give up his life. And of course the apostles are shocked at this also. They didn't envision this. And then he talks about his resurrection and that he will send a helper to be with them for the rest of their lives and for all of us. In the Greek, the helper is called the paraclete. Not parakeet, okay? Paraclete, parakletos, which means a counselor, one called alongside to help, is the kind of technical Greek meaning of that word. And that's the word for the Holy Spirit. One of the ways that God is omnipresent would be through the Holy Spirit. Everywhere, in everything, but in us. Okay, if you're a believer, he's in you. But anyway, Jesus talks about something that is appropriate for us in these times. He says, "In this world you will have trouble." Now that's a promise, but it's not a promise that we particularly appreciate, right? But then he goes on to say, "But take heart, I have overcome the world. In this world we'll have trouble. But take heart, Jesus has overcome the world," right? So I would recommend to all of you that you take a moment on Good Friday or Saturday in between or Easter Sunday and check out the chapter of 13 and 14 in the Gospel of John if you get a chance. And or on Easter Sunday in 2 days, you could check out chapter 18, 19, 20, and 21 in the Gospel of John. I may do a follow-up video for Easter Sunday to discuss that. Alright, so Jesus says, "As I have loved you, so you must love one another." And he repeats that 3 times. That's one of the solutions for the troubled times that people find themselves in right now. Try to take some moments over the next day or 2 to reach out to other people in your life who you may not normally talk to or help. There are all kinds of ways, even if you're in a isolated state. Maybe you're in a place where you have a stay-at-home order, whatever state or country you're in. Maybe you can't get out. Of course, we have a lot of that here. One of my daughters, she works at a big retail store where they do groceries and have all kinds of other goods for sale, a Fred Meyer, right? And she's really having a tough time because that's one of the only places that's open. So everyone's going there as their gathering place, and she has to breathe the air from, hundreds of people that are in close proximity. So she's having panic attacks and things like that. Try to encourage people in those kinds of positions. I have other relatives or people that I'm in close contact with that are in positions like emergency medical technician, Yvonne, a sister-in-law. She's an EMT. Imagine having to cart people back and forth to the hospital right now and every day. Or my sister's daughter is a respiratory therapist in a hospital, so she is on the front line treating COVID patients every day, right? All these people, you can encourage them. I got together with my daughter yesterday, who's, those people are heroes who are providing food and services to people at this time. So give them some encouragement. Because I'm at such high risk, I couldn't sit down with her at the table or something like that, like we usually do for a meal together on Thursdays. So what I did was I met her outside by not the ocean, but by the waterfront. The wind was blowing strong. So I stayed upwind from her, all because she's being exposed all day. And if I was to get this virus, it would probably be fatal because of the chemotherapy and things I'm doing. So she stayed downwind from me, and we're still able to have a nice visit, right? So there are many things you can do. I'll be calling family members today to encourage them. And, people are bringing food to elderly shut-ins in a safe way, of course, prophylactically. So all that kind of thing you can do to encourage other people. Myself, when this Easter time is over, I'm taking a break from some of my normal activities for 3 days, Good Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, kind of fasting from some of my normal recreational activities, and then I'm going to come back and make more videos for you to relax you as a service if it can help. I'll try to do it more frequently. I've been super busy and I want to, but I want to help. But I would always also encourage you, whether you're a believer or not, to think about the reason for Good Friday and Easter Sunday. By the way, this is the passage where Jesus said, I am the way, the truth, and the life. No one comes to the Father except through me. If you know me, you know the Father as well. From now on, you know him and you have seen him. Jesus was the bodily embodiment of God as the second member of the Trinity, and he made that clear. A lot of people say, oh, he was just a prophet or a man. No, he said he was basically second member of the Trinity. So we find that throughout. But let's go back now to DaVinci's painting and see some interesting details about it. Here's a photo of the Last Supper. Much of the recent interest in the painting has centered on details hidden within the painting, but in directing attention to these hidden details, most people miss the incredible sense of perspective that the work displays. The angling of the walls, the windows, etc. Da Vinci loved to put geometric perspective meanings into his paintings. So, for example, here are people viewing the painting, and then here you can see that all the lines in the painting, the perspective lines, diverge so that they all center on a part of Jesus' mind, which would be, say, his heart or soul in Da Vinci's thinking. The lines all converge to a center point. Da Vinci balanced the perspective construction of the Last Supper so that the vanishing point of the converging lines is immediately behind Jesus' right temple, pointing to the physical location of the sensus communis, his mind, his brain. By pulling a string in radial directions from this point, he marked the table ends, floor lines, orthogonal edges of 6 ceiling coffer columns, windows, etc. Right? Leonardo was well known for his love of symmetry. In his Last Supper, the layout is largely horizontal, but the large table seen in the foreground of the image, with all the figures behind it. Oh, I have somebody here who's also going to be celebrating with me. Yeah. The Good Friday service today. We're going to take communion in a whole different way, remotely, but still all at once. We'll have a little wine, not very much, okay? Not very much. Little, and some crackers, and we will participate in the live stream Good Friday service. And that's essentially a commemoration. If you're Catholic like Joanne, it's called a sacrament. And we can reasonably call it that in Christianity, evangelical type as well. I'm all kind of messed up today, huh? I gotta get it together. I got up not long ago, right? Wait, I'm pulling this the wrong way because I'm in reverse. I'm in reverse on the camera. 10 facts you may not know about the masterpiece. Unlike traditional frescoes, which Renaissance masters painted, Da Vinci's painting did not adhere properly and began to flake away a few years after the work was finished. The spilled salt is symbolic. I don't know if I can pull up that detailed, because I don't even know where the salt shaker is on this big table layout. But I guess there's a spilled salt. I'll rely on those who are experts in the painting. It's probably a reference to Judas. But we're supposed to be called the salt of the earth if we're spreading God's message. We're supposed to be the seasoning, Spilled salt could symbolize bad things. And Jesus is known as the salt of the earth, as are his followers. So that would be symbolic of him giving up his life. The third thing, what are they eating, it says. Eel or herring. I kid you not. Now, I don't know who wrote this. I'll have to look up the author. But if they know anything about Jewish customs and requirements for food, what is halal? Oh wait, that's the Arabic or Islamic. Kosher. What is kosher? Eel is definitely not on the menu. Thank goodness, because I don't want to eat any eel myself. That's just me. The Levitical law to the Jews was to eat fish that have fins, but not fish that don't. Okay, so that's not an eel. I guess maybe it could be a herring or any of the fish from the Sea of Galilee. Next unknown fact. DaVinci used a hammer and nail to help him achieve a one-point perspective. Yes, we didn't know that, or I didn't know it. I guess he nailed in a nail in the wall to help him figure out how to make his lines converge where he wanted them to. The artwork contains a dire warning. In 2010, this isn't really a little-known fact about Da Vinci. It's just something that came along after the fact. Someone or other came up with a theory that hidden messages in his art predict the apocalypse will come in the year 4006. So you see, you're safe for another almost 2,000 years. So don't worry. All right. The existing mural, next fact, is not Da Vinci's work. What they mean by that is it started to deteriorate so fast that it's been restored many times. At the end of the 20th century, restorer Panin Brambilla Barcelona and his crew relied on microscopic photographs, coarse samples, infrared reflectoscopy. I'm going to try to say that 10 times fast. Reflectoscopy and sonar to remove the added layers of paint and restore the original as accurately as possible. Critics maintain that only a fraction of the original work exists today. However, 3 copies of the original exist because you see, Da Vinci had students who were trying to replicate his work as best they could. 3 of Da Vinci's students, including Giampietrino, made copies of his painting early in the 16th century. Giampietrino, I know I have Italian viewers. And by the way, my heart goes out to Italy because they are, as far as per capita, I think the hardest hit country. Even though the U.S. has more cases and fatalities, Italy is like the hardest hit country per capita, right? But anyway, Giampietrino did a full, so tell me if I'm pronouncing this wrong, did a full-scale copy, now in London's Royal Academy of Arts. I hope you can't hear that annoying saw in the distance, but instead of getting angry at my neighbors, I'm going to practice what I just told you. Jesus said we're supposed to love our neighbor as ourselves. If ever there's a tough command to follow, that's it. Okay? All right. This oil painting on campus was the primary resource for the latest restoration of the work. The second copy by Andrea Solari is in the Leonardo da Vinci Museum in Belgium, while the third copy by Cesar de Sesto is in the Church of St. Ambrogio in Switzerland. Next little-known fact. The painting is also a musical score. According to Italian musician Giovanni Maria Palla, Da Vinci incorporated musical notes into the Last Supper. In 2007, Palla created a 40-second melody from the notes that were allegedly hidden in the scene. Well, we do know Da Vinci liked to hide a lot of details and Easter eggs, so to speak. someone said to the great theologian and philosopher, Dr. William Lane Craig, when they were debating on does God exist? Is the resurrection a genuine fact of history? Craig's opponent said, "You should not put all your eggs in one basket." And Craig said in reply, "Well, at least they're Easter eggs." Okay, so I thought that was a pretty good retort on his part. Anyway, the painting has been a victim of neglect and abuse. This is a bit sad. The monks removed a chunk of the artwork that had Jesus' feet on it because they were making room for a door or something. Late in the 18th century, Napoleon Bonaparte's soldiers from France turned the area into a stable and damaged the wall further. During World War II, the Nazis bombed the monastery where the original work is, reducing all the surrounding walls to rubble. But interestingly, not the wall that has DaVinci's painting. So I think it was supposed to remain intact for us today. And finally, last but not least, the painting has been repeatedly restored. DaVinci's masterpiece has been subject to numerous restoration attempts. Some of these took place in 1726, 1770, 1853, 1903, 1924, 1928, and 1978. That's 7 restorations, okay? That's why the latest one, they tried to take a lot of that restoration stuff off and get back to the original. This isn't a very good rendering that my printer printed out, but if I hold it back like an impressionist painting, then you can get the idea. But there is a lot of detail in it that I'm sure Leonardo da Vinci was hoping we could hunt through and find for some of the meaning there. I hope that you're all doing well wherever you are. If you're a fellow believer, feel free, or even if you're not, feel free to join me in watching the live stream of both the Good Friday service this evening. I think we'll watch it at 7 p.m. and also the Easter service at Twin Lakes Church, which will also be live streamed on Facebook or on the Twin Lakes website. And I will link to the most recent message on which I derived my inspiration for this video in the description below, as well as linking to the Twin Lakes Church live stream links for those services. All right, until next time, everybody. And I haven't forgotten all my promises on other videos I'll make in the future, like traveling around Oregon, places to see. You can't do it at the moment, but you'll want to do it someday in the future. So I'll do that video within the next few weeks or months. I'll do vinyl classic LPs. I'll do many other things. I'll do a vegan cookbook that Joanne just got, so I can show you all the things that I will refuse to eat, and yeah, all that kind of thing. All right, take care, everyone. Remember the reason for the season. Bye-bye for now.